I'm Arthur Kistner, the librarian here at the Fitchburg Public Library, and I'm very pleased that you're all here today, our friends from Southeast Asia and many other people here, for this, the 10th program in the Ethnic Heritage Series funded by the National Endowment for the Humanities. We have a very full program today, and unfortunately, Dr. Granger Browning, who was the program coordinator, could not be here today, so he asked me to substitute for him. We have a very distinguished scholar in this program who is eminently qualified to begin the program about the Southeast Asian cultures, Dr. Ba Pho. He's recognized as an authority both in the United States and abroad on Asian cultures and international relations. He is the assistant professor of political science at Lowell University. He has also served as a visiting professor at Saigon University and a visiting lecturer at the National Institute of Administration in South Vietnam. His lectures, both here and abroad, have covered a wide variety of topics, such as Vietnamese politics and culture, U.S. policy in Southeast Asia, socio-political conditions for Asian immigration to the United States. In addition to all of his scholarly works, he's played a leading role in dealing with some of the problems of people from Southeast Asia, and among his activities, he served as special assistant to the governor of the National Bank of Vietnam on the national budget of Vietnam. He's the co-founder and currently president of the Indo-Chinese Refugee Foundation, and he has also served as a reviewer of public programs for the National Endowment for the Humanities. He's been educated right here in the United States, having received his Bachelor of Arts degree from Boston College, a Master of Arts in American History from Rutgers University, and his Master's and PhD in Political Science from Boston University. So you can see from these credentials, and I could have read much more, but we would have spent most of the afternoon here with the introduction. You can see from these credentials that Dr. Ba Pho is certainly qualified to share with us his knowledge and his feelings about the topic of today, our newest arrivals here in this country, our people from Southeast Asia. Dr. Ba Pho.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kistner, for your very kind words. I'm sorry I could not be more prepared to deliver this lecture today. First of all, I would like to thank the members of the Southeast Asian Committee for selecting me to present this lecture to you. Secondly, I would like to point out that my presentation deals mostly with a particular group of immigrants, the refugees from Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam, who most recently comes to the United States from Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia has been described as an area south of China and east of India. It includes the present political units of Burma, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, Malaysia, the Republic of Singapore, the Philippines, and Indonesia. Altogether, it has a population of about 250 million people living in an area of land total just over 1.5 million square miles. More than half of the land is part of the Asian mainland masses, and the rest is broken up into thousands of islands which made up Indonesia and the Philippines. However, more than half of the population lives on these islands. Southeast Asia is located within the tropical zones of both sides of the equator. A traveler going from Burma to Bali would move from delta to coastal mountain ridges to river valley, and again across a series of valleys to mountain ridges to reach another delta on the other side of the mountains. Where water was plentiful, he would find wet rice planting. Where it was scarce, he would find, like on the plateau and mountain ridges, he would find fewer established communities, many of them practicing slash and burn cultivations. He would notice a close relationships between rainfall and fertility, and the seasonal monsoon affected the life pattern of mostly rural people. The history of the people of Southeast Asia was also affected by the ecological conditions of the land, especially by shaping the population distribution across this area. Since the floodplains, which are rich in alluvial soil, were ideal for wet rice, and since the hinterland was less suitable except for migrant populations, very different cultural and social institutions developed. Wet rice planting demanded and could also support a dense population, which produced far greater social wealth and population than the hilly regions. The major agricultural kingdoms in Burma, in Thailand, in Cambodia, and Vietnam have their centers of power in these rich valleys and deltas, and they radiated their control outward from their capitals to the outlying regions. Whenever one state did attempt to impose control over the adjacent buffer zones, geopolitical tensions increases, and the upland peoples who were threatened were likely to appeal for support to a contending lowland kingdom, which would seek to restore the area's power balance. Only Cambodia, among the major wet rice societies, lacked the natural borders because of its exposed position between Thailand and Vietnam. Cambodia eventually lost its strength and its position as a major power in the region. Although institutions of monarchy and principalities were well established and long-standing in this area, they showed their limitations with the intrusions of Western powers and Western institutions. National boundaries, for instance, which implied clear-cut physical lines and loyal citizenships living within them, were not clearly understood or developed in Southeast Asia until the late 18th century. The Vietnamese Laotian wars of the 17th century, for instance, were settled when the Vietnamese emperor and the Lao king agreed that every inhabitant in the upper Mekong Valley who lived in a house built on stilts owed allegiances to the Laotian king. And those who live on earthen floors, houses, would owe allegiance to the Vietnamese emperor. So in the aftermath of Western intervention and colonization, each society had embarked upon the search for a formula to broaden its socio-political control, as well as to overcome the linguistic, religious, ethnic, and social isolations within its own borders. This trend toward greater national control and toward restructuring of alliances increasingly impinge upon traditional ways of life and primordial loyalties. In some societies, such as Vietnam and Cambodia, internal struggles, compounded with foreign intervention, contributed to the widespread warfare and the persecutions among competing political and ethnic groups. So with the exception of the Thai immigrants to this area, most Vietnamese, Cambodian, Laotian, and the Lao Hmong who came to this country since 1975 were refugees fleeing persecutions in their own countries. The story then is the story of the Lao Hmong, of the Lao, of the Cambodians, and of the Vietnamese refugees in the United States. First, I would like to talk about the Lao Hmong. The Hmong originally populated the hills of South China. In the 19th century, some 50,000 migrated south to northern Laos to find greater freedom and more land. Eventually, their number increased to over 500,000, and they divided among some 21 clans. In the 60s, most of the men between the age of 12 and 55 were recruited by the CIA to fight its secret war against the North Vietnamese and the Lao Communist forces. When the Lao royal government collapses in 1975, the Hmong were forced to flee the country or risk being destroyed by the Vietnamese. The 100,000 monks who must flee by foot had to walk 20 to 25 days across jungle land, hundreds of miles to the Thai border. They must brave currents and communist bullets to cross the large Mekong River. Many died trying to escape. Those who survived spent months and years in remote refugee camps surrounded by barbed wires and patrolled by Thai police. Only about 54,000 were allowed to resettle permanently in the United States, mostly in Missoula, Montana, St. Paul, Minnesota, and Providence, Rhode Island. The Hmong are very clannish people put a great deal of trust in their leaders. Clans consist of those persons of the same paternal ancestry. Of the 21 clans, some have, such as the Chang, the Lo, the Mua, the Thao, the Vang, and the Yang, have a large population. All clan members are considered brothers and sisters. Men remain members of the clan for life, and women normally changes from one clan to another by marriage. Each clan is led by a leader who oversees all relationships with the outsiders. As leader of his clan, he also has particular powers to communicate with the ancestors during tribal rituals. Most Hmong retain the traditional religious customs that they have developed throughout the ages. Many also adopted Christianity and Buddhism. The Hmong believe in many supernatural beings, including household spirits, spirits of the dead, the spirits of the good, and the spirits of the evil. They do not actually worship these spirits or divine beings. They have no temples and they worship no images. They share a common belief that all spirits and souls must eat and drink like all human beings, or if they are hungry, they would likely cause illness to their clan members. Thus, in order to keep themselves healthy, the monks have to work extra hard to produce food sufficient not only to themselves, but also to feed the spirits. Although the Hmong languages had been phonetized by Christian missionaries in the early 1950s, most have not had the opportunities to learn to read and write. They rely on the oral tradition to teach their children of clan history and customs. Since coming to the United States, younger monks are eager to learn and show strong academic and artistic abilities. Sua Thao, for instance, spoke little English when he came to Providence 6 years ago. Today, he is a junior pre-med student at Brown University, and he hopes to become the first monk doctor in America. Next, I would like to talk about the Laotian people. During the 7th century AD, the Lao people moved out from southern China to settle along the Mekong River Valley. Eventually, they spread out over an area of approximately 91,000 square miles, the size of the state of Utah, with a population of approximately 4 million people. In the early 60s, an international conference in Geneva helped put together a neutralist coalition government under Prince Suvarnabhuma. This government received support of money and weapons from the United States. Failing to achieve control, the Laotian communists under the Pathet Lao carried out armed struggles, and by December 1975 succeeded in achieving a complete control of the country. Approximately 300,000 Lao fled the People's Democratic Republic across the Mekong River into refugee camps in Thailand. Many have since been encouraged to repatriate, but about 71,000 were resettled in the United States, and 27,000 are still living in refugee camps today. To the Laotian people, the family is the central social unit. Although they have remote loyalty to the ruling families in each cities or muang, such as the royal family of King Sisa Vang Vong in Luang Prabang, each Laotian is expected to give primary loyalty to the man who is the elder and the traditional head of the family. Laotian family tends to be large. It is not uncommon for 4 generations to live within a household. Women take care of household chores and financial matters, and the children, even after marriage, tends to remain in the parents' home. When other religions exist in Laos, Buddhism is practiced by a vast majority of the people. Boys and young men can become novice monks, and women can become nuns. Buddhist monks serve not only the traditional functions of celebrants and religious teachers, of teaching the Dharma, the Buddhist teaching, but they also have a large role in the society, such as counselor, healers, teacher, and community leaders. Most Lao men are required to enter monkhood at least for a short time before marriage. This religious practice is necessary to give thanks to the parents who bring them up and to increase their wisdom for the beginning of a new life. The original language with a written alphabet is tonal and monosyllabical. It has been enriched by Sanskrit and Pali, 2 very old Indian languages, particularly to express concepts in science, philosophy, and religion. Lao children go to public school when they are 6 years of age. If the parent can support them, the students would study until the 12 years, and afterward they must pass the first half of the baccalaureate exam in order to enter the 3rd and last year of their secondary education. The Lao people are in a very advanced stage of craftsmanship and artistic development. Jewelries, silver balls, ivory carvings are widely made in Laos, and weavings of intricate designs with gold and silver threads on cotton and silk apparels are of unusual beauty and is perhaps the best admired craft of all of Southeast Asia. As far as the population in Cambodia is concerned, Cambodia today it is estimated to have about 8.9 million people living in an area of approximately 70,000 square miles, or the size of Missouri. Much of this area is rolling plain, with the Mekong River traverses the country, and the Tole Sap, or the Great Lake, like Lake Erie, which nourish the land. The history of Cambodia dated back to the 1st century And at the peak of its civilization, between 500 and 1300 AD, the Angkor Empire extended from the South China Sea to the Gulf of Siam. It also built the Angkor Wat, one of the 7 wonders of the world, with towers 215 feet into the sky and 2.5 miles of moats surrounding tens of thousands of temples and galleries. During the 60s, Cambodian peace and neutrality was achieved mostly by the charismatic Prince Sihanouk. In 1970, General Lon Non took power after a bloodless coup against the prince. Cambodia was soon engulfed into a widened war in Vietnam. In 1975, Lon Non lost power to the Khmer Rouge, or the Khmer Communists, headed by Pol Pot. Between 1975 and 1978, more than 1 million Cambodians died under the Khmer Rouge regime. In 1978, Communist Vietnamese armed forces overran Cambodia, and early 1979 established a Vietnamese-dominated regime of Hang Sam-rin. Terrorized by the Khmer Rouge and fled from control by the invading Vietnamese troops, hundreds of thousands of Cambodians fled into Thailand. Because of this warfare and calamities, the rice harvest was greatly reduced in 1979, which threatened widespread famine throughout Cambodia. Nationwide catastrophe was averted only by massive international food reliefs. At the end of 1981, over 200,000 Cambodians have returned to the villages in Cambodia. About 85,000 are still living in Thai camps today, many of whom are members of the Democratic Republic of Cambodia, a tripartite government led by the same Prince Sihanouk again, who tried this time to fight off the Vietnamese and recover Cambodia. There are approximately 80,600 Cambodians who are resettled in the United States today. Most have been subjected to traumatic experience, including inhuman brutalities to their immediate family members, starvation, forced labor, robbery, and rapes. Even after having been resettled here, many still grieve for their loved ones who have died or disappeared to unknown places. They are also gravely torn by the loss of their nation now under foreign domination. In Cambodia, the nuclear family is more prevalent than the extended family found elsewhere. In normal time, the Cambodian family is likely to be economically independent, owning its own home and land to be self-sufficient. Since Buddhism has been the official religion, its influence pervaded every aspect of life. In rural areas, temples is the center of the community, and the monks serve as the teachers as well as the traditional religious leaders and celebrants. Unlike Lao, Thai, and Vietnamese, the Khmer language is a tonal language and has 2 or more syllabic words. The language has many words borrowed also from the Sanskrit, relating to political, religious, and literary subjects. Public education was well established since the 19th century. It has been standardized throughout the country and include the elementary system as well as the secondary level. University education is available for the more affluent and the better educated in the societies. In the countryside, the monks also maintain their own educational systems. Instruction include not only Buddhist teachings, but also literacy in Khmer language. The Cambodian people are very talented and artistically inclined people. Their architectures and sculpture are priceless, and their music and classical dances, performed mostly by young women, represented legendary characters, and they have fascinated and entertained the royal family members as well as the commoners for generations. Lastly, I would like to talk about the Vietnamese people. Today, there are approximately 420,000 Vietnamese refugees living in the United States. They represent 67% of all Southeast Asian refugees resettled here since 1975. They come from a country shaped like an S, bordering the Pacific, with approximately 53 million people living in an area of 127 square miles. The Vietnamese are said to be descendants of a Mongolian race living in South China. After settling in the Red River Delta, they spread south to the Gulf of Siam. After 1,000 years of Chinese domination, the Vietnamese won their independence in the year 938 AD and founded successive dynasties. In 1883, they lost their independence to the French. After the First Indochina War, the Geneva Accords of 1954 divided Vietnam at the 17th parallel. Ho Chi Minh and his communist government controlled the north. Ngo Dinh Diem, appointed by the ex-Emperor Bao Dai, governed the south. In the early 60s, South Vietnam came under increasing Vietnamese communist guerrilla attacks. From being largely advisory, the U.S. role became more and more of an active combatant, with U.S. soldiers engaging in search and destroy missions against the guerrilla and the North Vietnamese regulars. During this period, the political situation in South Vietnam was also in turmoil. After the November 1963 coup d'etat, during which President Diem was killed, the South was ruled by successive military regimes. Political instability and unrest favored the communist efforts to destroy the South and undermine the American involvement in Vietnam. After persistent negotiation, a peace agreement was signed in Paris in 1973. This agreement provided for a ceasefire and a withdrawal of all non-Vietnamese foreign forces in the South. When South Vietnam lost the vital support of the United States, the North continued to increase its military strength in the South with massive infiltration of troops and supplies. As a result, the defense systems of the South rapidly disintegrated, and Saigon fell to the communist troops on April 30, 1975. The victory of the North led to a massive, chaotic flights of Southerners to the United States. Communist government in the South, with its policies since 1978, have produced a second wave of refugees, many of them of Chinese origin. The plight of the both people have attracted the attention and the support of the world community. It has resulted in a greater effort to settle them in third world countries. The Vietnamese people have a well-developed sense of loyalty to their nation, their land, their teachers, and their parents. Vietnamese native villages also hold a great meaning to their identity, and Vietnamese family provide the framework of a person's social position. Take, for instance, a person. He normally is not referred to by his name, but by the rank and place that he exists in his family, like he is uncle number 2 of the paternal family side, or she is auntie number 4 of the mother's side. In Vietnam, the three teachings of Buddhism, Confucianism, and Taoism have blended together to form the foundation of all traditions and customs. Most people are practicing Buddhists. They go to the temple, they practice fasting, and they observe the teaching of Buddha in their daily life. With the advent of missionaries, Catholicism have also occupied an important place in Vietnamese society. Vietnamese languages is basically monosyllabical and has 6 tones, which gave it a sing-song effect. At the turn of the century, a modified Roman alphabet developed by the missionaries was made official in place of the old Chinese writings. The new writing system has greatly facilitated the development of mass education and communications. To the Vietnamese, education occupies an extremely important place. A teacher in traditional Vietnam was second only to the emperor and superseded the parents. Education in Vietnam was free and mandatory for all children of age 6 and older. The primary level consists of 5 grades, and the secondary level is divided into 2 cycles. The first one for 4 years, and the second one for 3 years. In the secondary level schools, students can choose vocational training or science and the humanities. In the science and humanities, they are required to study mathematics, literature, philosophy, biology, chemistry, physics, French, and English. There are well-established universities as well as professional schools of medicine, law, engineering in Vietnam. In the United States, where the education opportunities are accessible, the Vietnamese have always tried to take advantage of it, and many have achieved great success in their educational development. Of the 620,000 Southeast Asian refugees in America today, approximately 14,000 live in Massachusetts, and some Laotian, Lao Hmong, Cambodian, and Vietnamese have been resettled here in the Fitchburg, Leominster area. Since all of them had fled tyranny and persecution, they must have all been thankful to the United States to provide them a place of asylum. However, since their life and fortunes were so intimately bound to the U.S. involvement in Southeast Asia, they strongly feel that the U.S. must be, in large part, responsible for their welfare. Some came here with the hope of starting a new life. Others came in order to prepare themselves for the day when they can go back again to Southeast Asia to fight and reclaim their lost homeland. Most Southeast Asian refugees will always experience this internal tension and ambivalences. On the one hand, they desperately wish to achieve success in America, but they have to overcome the language barrier and many cultural gaps. Some have demonstrated their ability to succeed. The case of Quang Tran is an example. Starting his new life 7 years ago as a welder in Seattle, Washington, the 30-year-old Quang Tran is now running his own shipbuilding and repair company. Tran's company grosses about $8 million last year and had provided jobs to both refugees and local Americans. But refugee children have shown greatest promises. Last year, for instance, out of 83 students on the honor rolls at Brighton High School in Boston, 56 were Southeast Asian refugees. Only 32 Vietnamese members of the June's graduating classes went to college, many of them with scholarships as well. On the other hand, there is a strong desire among the adult members of the refugee communities to go back to the once lost societies. In a 1981 survey made by the Indo-Chinese Refugee Action Center in Washington, some 500 Indo-Chinese mutual assistance associations were surveyed. Of these, 75% expressed the desire to build a strong ethnic community life by providing social services to their own members. 25% indicated major efforts to preserve their own ethnic cultural heritages. Only 17% were concerned with the professional training or employment services to their own communities. Although success or failure is largely a result of an individual's effort, it also depends, in this particular case, on the consequences of public policies of the United States to resettle refugees throughout the United States. Without the provisions of an effective community support program, many Southeast Asian refugees will not be able to overcome the continuous challenges of a free market industrial societies. Many will have lost the opportunity to restart a new life here, and many will disappear among the silent, forgotten Americas. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pho, for that very informative and moving talk about the four cultures in Southeast Asia. Many of us here have heard and learned bits of information about the various cultures there through reading about the conflict in that part of the world over the past several years. But you've given us a perspective here today that I know will be greatly appreciated by all of us as we continue our exploration of the cultures of Southeast Asia. So once again, we thank you very much for that excellent and very informative presentation. Unfortunately, we have a very full program and there isn't sufficient time to allow for questions, but Dr. Pho, I know, will remain for the social period that will follow the entire program, and I hope that all of you who would like to talk further with him take this opportunity to do so. And now it gives me great pleasure to tell you that the program today has been in the planning stages for 2 years. And it's been developed, and its success today is due to the local committee of people from the Southeast Asian community here in Fitchburg, as well as many American supporters and representatives. And the chairperson of that committee, who has been working with this committee for over 2 years, will now take the program over and take us forward with it. And it's my great pleasure to turn the program over now to Deborah Kukala, chairperson of the Southeast Asian Committee.
Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to congratulate all of you for being here, because all of you came seeking knowledge. As George Santayana said, the wisest mind has something yet to learn. The scholar, like the ox-eye daisy, which stands for wisdom, shared some of his knowledge with us. And as he spoke, we blossomed, like the daisy, in knowledge, insight, and wisdom. It is now my great pleasure to bring onto this stage traditional Hmong dancers. 5 young ladies will be performing. Maida Young, Mai Kia Young, Mai Iowa Young, Mai Lee Moore, and Chia Moore. Before I introduce the slide series, I'd like to thank some people. Dr. Granger Browning helped our committee pick our scholar, and I think he made a very wise choice. Dr. Margaret Kelty, Arthur Kissner, Linda Newman, Sharon Reynolds, David Ryder, Eleanor West, and Eleanor Whitcomb all serve as the coordinating committee. The Indo-Chinese Committee has consisted of many members: Tum Dan Ha, Mai Hua Vei, B. Moore, Samsak Kunsurbak, Bonnie Bear, Santa Garligan, Tony Phúc Dan Ha, Wayside and Thak Hu Chunk the Chunk, Peter A. Kukala, Louise C. Mader, Irene L. Kamala, Claire Fortin, Nancy Herb, and myself. All the members of these committees have done a lot of work to bring these programs to you, and I think they deserve a round of applause. One person who has been very instrumental in getting together this slide series is Gunther Hoos. He's put up with all of us, has had patience, and I think he should get an award for battle wounds. The name of the slide presentation is First Generation. And of course, it's about our Indo-Chinese friends.